Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Dan, and today we are going to talk about a game called Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This game released in June of 1997, and it was produced by Yasuhiro Wada, who wanted to make an RPG with no combat. And so Harvest Moon was literally inspired by his childhood in the Japanese countryside, and the rest is history. But before we get too into that, let me just introduce myself. So like I said, my name is Dan. I go by Danomak on the internet, and I talk your ear off about video games on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Danomak. So if you like this episode, then make sure you go check out those videos as well. So Harvest Moon released on the Super Nintendo during the 90s, which is also considered the golden age of RPGs. You've got Breath of Fire, you've got Final Fantasy VI, you've got Chrono Trigger, and now you've got this farming game coming out of almost nowhere. Because at the time, nothing else like this really existed. If it was an RPG, it was combat focused. You were saving the world. You were saving the princess or the prince, whoever. It was all about fighting bosses and growing your team. But instead, Harvest Moon dared to teach the player how to cultivate and create rather than laying waste to their opponents. Instead of growing levels, you're growing corn. But farming was the main focus and primary means of moving the game forward. You could not progress through this game if you didn't figure out how to grow your crops right. And with that, you would figure out what's the perfect pattern for tilling my soil. How do I manage this budget that is very limited? Which things should I grow? What's going to make me the most money? You had to make all of these decisions which would inform the way the game grew around you. So what you did was literally reflected in the ground and the area that you inhabited. If you decided to grow turnips, you knew that they would grow fast and you would sell them often, but they wouldn't make you as much money as, potatoes, which would grow a lot slower, but when they land with a lot of cash, and they keep producing after they first grow. So rather than figuring out combat strategies, you're over here figuring out what crops to grow, and somehow it's fun. And this is, to me, what stuck out about Harvest Moon at the time. Now, I wish I could say that Harvest Moon appealed to my more elegant gamer brain at the age of 13, but no, I was just figuring out how to play RPGs correctly, and then Harvest Moon rolled in and showed me that it wasn't always about fighting. And even though I had some exposure to games like SimCity or StarCraft, where you would grow areas and colonies and towns, and based on what you did, they would do certain things, I still felt like this was a bit different, and I realized why only recently. Instead of just building a town, Harvest Moon invites you to live in a town and become a part of its community. You would learn things about the people who lived in the town that neighbored your farm. You would decide if you wanted to marry somebody who lived in that town. There were 5 eligible bachelorettes. They all had different preferences and interests, and they all had different things to say. And if you gave them the right gifts, whether or not you were courting them for marriage, you would learn more about them. They would open up to you, and this is, to me, a bigger part of how Harvest Moon felt alive. On one hand, the landscape is literally changing around your decisions. Everything looks different based on what you decide to do when it comes to growing your farm. And on the other hand, these people exist in this town and they actually have things going on. They're not just NPCs with dialogue boxes. I mean, they are, but the dialogue boxes are sometimes complicated to reach. But forming and maintaining those relationships was, again, just one part of this bigger experience in Harvest Moon. This game was all about managing resources, whether that be your character's energy, your money, your seeds, and making sure that your livestock don't die during the winter. The stakes were fairly high in this game. The cows could pass away if they're not fed, and your chickens could be abducted by wild dogs if you leave them out overnight or if you don't fix your fence. So while this is not an RPG in the traditional sense, and I'm doing hard air quotes here, this is a game where you're managing a lot of different things for your success. And on top of that, there are plenty of secrets to be found in this game. As you upgrade your tools, you can do more with your farm with less energy. So there's rewards waiting for you at every turn in Harvest Moon. Whether these rewards be visual, where the game's changing around you and looking more interesting, or your energy levels go up because you found more power berries throughout the farm. And if you play this game without a guide, there are plenty of secrets that you could easily miss, even if you play the game once or twice. So while there are a lot of short-term goals in Harvest Moon, one of the main things you're going to do in this game is appeal to your father's approval after 2.5 years of in-game time. Because by then, your dad's going to show up at your farm and he's going to say, hey, how'd you do? Did you get married? Did you have kids? Did you decide to grow cows? Did you decide to grow chickens? And it's right about here where the game decides whether or not you won Harvest Moon. But even though there was this clear end game in sight, I was always interested in the short-term goals, which I think says a lot about me now because that's sort of how I function as an adult. But I was always excited in the next thing. What crops am I going to grow in the next season? What's going to change when the seasons change? What new things are going to come my way? When there's an in-game event coming up on the calendar, I like to make sure that I'm set up for the event, whether or not I have to grow some crops for it or something. I don't know. But I was always looking ahead just a little bit to see what I could do to enjoy that part of the game that much more. But on top of all of this, the thing that ties the experience of Harvest Moon together most tightly is the art and the music. In my opinion, the pixel art in Harvest Moon stands shoulder to shoulder with games like Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI or Earthbound. The art direction was clear and cohesive and everything just looked really nice and alive. Not to mention this game's music, even though it is a little bit campy, which I think you can give a pass to a farming sim for being campy, but in Harvest Moon, it was perfectly suited for the more relaxed gameplay that the experience stood for. And each season, the music would perfectly match that time of year's tone. So spring felt methodical, summer felt playful, winter felt really somber, and fall came off as a little busy. And with these seasonal changes, you would have different crops and also different challenges. And I think it goes without saying, but winter was easily the most difficult season. Like I said earlier, your cows can starve to death, and if you don't prepare for that in the winter by backloading seeds and backloading hay and making sure you've got cow feed for emergencies, then you're going to have a rough time. And as I sit here and I think about all the things that made Harvest Moon special and unique to me, I recall the fact that I didn't have my own Super Nintendo to play on at the time. I had to rely on friends, so whenever I went over to somebody's house, I would hopefully play their Super Nintendo if they let me. And in really rare occasions, like with my family friend's house with Harvest Moon, they let me have a save on their cartridge that they promised they wouldn't play when I wasn't there. So whenever I would go over to this family friend's house, I would play my Harvest Moon save. I would visit my farm. I would see the people in the town and say hi to them and give them the gifts that I would give them and visit my cows and say hi to my chickens. And all of these things were my own. It was like my little Zen garden, a place I could just visit to relax and have fun. I wouldn't get too frustrated on boss fights. I mean, I knew I had to take care of business and make sure my farm was working and my cows were fed and everything was going, but I wasn't dealing with grinding out levels and finding the right sword. Instead, it was a place for me to go, and it was fun and different and unique. And whenever I spoke to my friends about it, they would, I don't want to say they were worried, but they were confused. Why are you so into this farming game? What is going on? It's a farming game. Please play Doom with us. Please play Pokemon with us. And I would play those games. But at the same time, I was so excited that I had this other thing that I loved that not everyone really loved. I was being a little bit of a hipster, I guess. I felt so cool. I had this niche series that I enjoyed that later I really am glad that the farming sim has caught on. You've got games like Stardew Valley. So a lot of the stuff that I mentioned, I'm talking about it like it was this big change, but if you've played a farming sim in the last 10 years, obviously you've interacted with this type of game before, but I can't overstate how new this whole concept was at the time. And it was special because of that, because not only was it new, but it was fun. It wasn't just novel, it was enjoyable. This is a game that spawned an entire genre of games just like it, and those games took the farming sim to the next level. You've got Stardew Valley, you've got spin-off after spin-off in the Harvest Moon series, you've got Story of Seasons, which is actually the Harvest Moon successor. All of these games take the farming sim to the next level and then the level after that. But the simplicity and the straightforward nature of Harvest Moon on the SNES is, to me, why I can pick that game up faster than I can a new Stardew Valley save. I know that sounds kind of crazy, especially if you love Stardew Valley. People start that game over and over again. But for my money, Harvest Moon, it's so straightforward and good and, nostalgic that I'll always have a save of that game running on my handheld console of choice. Obviously, it's available on the Nintendo Switch Online, so if you want to do that, you can. You can also obtain it by any other means that are completely legal, and obviously do that. I just think it's really worth playing even today, whether you're going to make a farming sim, whether you love farming sims and you want to play the one that started it all, whatever it is, or if you've never played a farming sim at all, absolutely start with Harvest Moon, because the gameplay loop is so straightforward and fun that I think anyone can have a great time with this game if they spend just a little bit of effort figuring out how it works. There was just so much charm and personality poured into the original Harvest Moon on the SNES that it will always have a place enshrined within my heart as one of my favorite games of all time. With all that being said, it's just about time for this old farmer to hit the hay. So thank you for letting me talk your ear off about Harvest Moon. I had a blast being a guest on Side Quests again, so thank you for having me, and as always, happy gaming.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
And Jacob McCord.
with many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Crossplay Conversations debuts on August 1st with brand new episodes hitting every other Tuesday. Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.